A poor boy helped a stranger carry groceries, and then he found out the stranger was famous. But this wasn't a story about luck or connections. What happened next revealed something far more powerful than money or status could ever offer. This is the story of how one act of genuine kindness became the most valuable thing in the world. Stay with us. Marcus was 14 years old, and he'd already learned more about survival than most people learn in a lifetime. It was 5:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, and he was already awake. Not because he wanted to be, because he had to be. His alarm was the sound of his mother's footsteps in the hallway as she prepared for her night shift at the hospital. She worked from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., 5 days a week as a cleaning supervisor. It paid $28,000 a year. It wasn't enough. Marcus pulled himself out of bed in the darkness. The sheets were thin, worn soft from 1,000 washes. His room was small, barely bigger than a closet, but it was his. He'd painted the walls himself with leftover paint from a job his uncle had done years ago. The color was called Seafoam Dream, which felt like a cruel joke in a bedroom with no window. He dressed quickly. Jeans with a small hole in the left knee, a gray hoodie that had faded from black over the years, sneakers that were held together with duct tape and hope. He looked at himself in the cracked mirror on his wall. Dark circles under his eyes, hollow cheeks. He was 14, but he looked older. Life had a way of aging you faster than time. Downstairs, his mother was making coffee. She moved slowly, like her body was remembering every hour of the night shift before it even happened. Her name was Patricia, and she was the strongest person Marcus had ever known. She never complained. Not once. Not even when the landlord threatened to raise the rent. Not even when the car broke down and they had to take the bus everywhere. Not even when his father left 5 years ago and never sent a single check. "You eat?" she asked, not looking at him. She was staring into the coffee maker like it held the secrets to the universe. "Yeah," Marcus lied. There was half a loaf of bread and some peanut butter, but he knew his mother hadn't eaten yet either. He wasn't going to watch her skip breakfast. "Good." She finally looked at him, and her eyes were soft, tired, but soft. "You got school?" "Then work," Marcus said. He had a shift at the grocery store starting at 3 p.m. He'd be there until 9 p.m. After school, he'd go straight there. He'd come home, do homework, sleep for 5 hours, and do it all over again. His mother reached into her purse and pulled out a crumpled $5 bill. "For lunch." Marcus wanted to refuse. He knew she didn't have $5 to spare. But he also knew that refusing would hurt her more than giving it would hurt them. So he took it. "I love you," she said, and she meant it in a way that made his chest tight. "Love you too, Mom." She left at 5:30. Marcus watched her walk down the street toward the bus stop, her work uniform visible under her coat, her shoulders slightly hunched against the cold. She looked small, smaller than she should have looked. School was a blur. Marcus sat in classes and took notes and tried to focus. But his mind was already at work. He was thinking about inventory. He was thinking about whether Mr. Chen, the store manager, would give him extra hours this week. He was thinking about whether his sister's school supplies would last until the end of the month. His sister's name was Sophia. She was 11. She was brilliant, genuinely brilliant. Her teacher said she was gifted. She had a 4.0 GPA, and she loved to read. She wanted to be a scientist. Marcus was determined that she would be, whatever it took. At lunch, Marcus sat in the cafeteria and ate the sandwich he'd made at home. Peanut butter and jelly, no chips, no drink, just the sandwich. Around him, Other kids were eating pizza and drinking soda and talking about their weekend plans. One girl was complaining that her parents were only taking her to Hawaii instead of Bali for spring break. Marcus didn't feel angry at them. He just felt separate, like he was watching their lives through glass. At 2:45 p.m., he was at the grocery store. He clocked in at 3 p.m. sharp. Mr. Chen nodded at him. That was as close to a greeting as Mr. Chen got. Marcus tied on his apron and headed to the stockroom. The grocery store was called Save Mart, and it was the kind of place that existed in the margins of the city. Not nice enough to be upscale, not cheap enough to be a discount store, just adequate. It served the neighborhood, working-class people, families like his, people who counted their pennies. Marcus's job was to stock shelves, help customers find things, and operate the register. He was good at it. He was fast and polite, and he never complained. Mr. Chen had told him once that Marcus was reliable, which Marcus understood to mean, you show up and you do the work, so I don't have to worry about you. The store was busy that afternoon. It was Tuesday, which meant it was the day before people got paid. So everyone was buying the cheapest things they could find. Marcus helped an elderly woman find the store brand flour. He helped a young father locate diapers. He restocked the canned vegetables section. He did it all with a kind of automatic efficiency that came from doing the same thing over and over again. At 6:30 p.m., during a brief lull, Marcus sat in the break room and ate the dinner he'd brought from home. Leftover rice and beans. No seasoning, just rice and beans. He ate it slowly, making it last because he wouldn't eat again until tomorrow. The evening shift was always the hardest. By 8 p.m., Marcus's feet hurt. His back hurt. His mind felt foggy. But he kept moving. He kept smiling at customers. He kept helping people find what they needed. There was an old man who came in around 7:45 p.m. He was looking for cat food. His hands were shaking slightly as he held the can, examining the label. Marcus noticed that the man's shoes were worn through at the heel. The man's coat had a stain on it. The man looked like he was carrying something heavy that had nothing to do with groceries. "Can I help you find anything else?" Marcus asked. The man looked at him, and for a moment, something passed between them. A recognition, an understanding. The man saw Marcus seeing him. "No," the man said quietly. "I think I've got what I need." But Marcus didn't think the man had what he needed at all. At 9 p.m., Marcus clocked out. He made $15 an hour, and he'd worked 6 hours, so that was $15 an hour, and he'd worked 6 hours, so that was $15 an hour, and he'd worked 6 hours, so that was $90 before taxes. After taxes, it would be about $75. He needed to give his mother $75. He needed to give his mother $75. He needed to give his mother $50 for rent. That left $25 for everything else. The walk home took 20 minutes. It was cold and Marcus didn't have a warm enough jacket, so he walked fast to stay warm. The neighborhood was quiet at this hour. Streetlights cast long shadows. He passed a homeless man sleeping in a doorway and made a mental note of which doorway it was. He'd bring the man a sandwich tomorrow. It wouldn't solve anything, but it was something. When he got home, his sister was already asleep. His mother was still at work. Marcus did his homework, algebra and an essay on the American Revolution. And then he went to bed. He lay in the darkness and thought about the old man in the grocery store. He thought about the recognition in the man's eyes. He thought about how there were so many people carrying invisible weights, so many people struggling, so many people who just needed someone to see them. And he thought about how small his own struggles felt when he looked at the bigger picture. Yes, his life was hard. Yes, he was poor. Yes, he was tired. But he had a mother who loved him. He had a sister who believed in him. He had a job. He had a roof over his head. There were people who didn't even have that. Marcus made a decision in the darkness. It was a small decision, but it felt important. Tomorrow, he would help that homeless man. He would bring him a sandwich. He would see him. Because being seen mattered. He'd learned that from the old man's eyes. The next morning, Marcus woke up at 5:47 a.m. again. His mother's footsteps in the hallway, the same routine, the same struggle. But something had shifted inside him. Some small part of him had decided that even though his life was hard, he could make someone else's life a little bit easier. He didn't know it yet. But this decision, this small, quiet decision to help someone without expecting anything in return, was about to change everything. But Marcus had no idea that his next act of kindness would change everything. The next morning, Marcus made 2 sandwiches instead of 1. Peanut butter and jelly. He wrapped them carefully in plastic wrap and put them in his backpack. 1 for him, 1 for the homeless man in the doorway. School dragged on. Marcus kept thinking about the sandwiches. He kept thinking about whether the man would still be there. He kept thinking about whether a sandwich would actually help, or whether it was just a gesture that made Marcus feel better about himself without changing anything real. By the time he got to the grocery store at 3 p.m., he'd convinced himself that the man probably wouldn't be there. Or if he was, maybe he wouldn't want the sandwich. Maybe he'd be offended. Maybe Marcus shouldn't interfere. But when Marcus walked past the doorway on his way to work, the man was there. He was sitting with his back against the brick wall, his legs stretched out in front of him. He was wearing the same coat. His eyes were closed. Marcus hesitated. Then he approached. "Hey," Marcus said softly, not wanting to startle him. The man's eyes opened. They were gray, and they looked like they'd seen a lot of things. He looked at Marcus with a kind of wariness, like he was trying to figure out if Marcus was a threat or an opportunity. "I brought you something," Marcus said. He pulled out the sandwich. "I made it this morning. Peanut butter and jelly." The man stared at the sandwich like it was the most confusing thing he'd ever seen. Then he looked at Marcus. "Why?" the man asked. It was a simple question, but it made Marcus pause. Why? Because the man looked hungry? Because Marcus had extra? Because it made Marcus feel good? "Because you look like you could use it," Marcus said finally. The man took the sandwich slowly, like he was afraid it might disappear if he moved too quickly. He unwrapped it carefully and looked at it for a long moment. Then he took a bite. He closed his eyes while he chewed, and when he opened them again, there was something different in his expression. Something softer. "Thank you," the man said. "Thank you very much." "You're welcome," Marcus said. He was going to be late for work if he didn't leave soon, but he found himself not wanting to go, not wanting to leave this moment. "What's your name?" the man asked. "Marcus." "I'm David," the man said. He didn't offer his last name. "You're a good kid, Marcus. Don't let the world convince you otherwise." Marcus nodded, not quite sure what to say. He had the strange feeling that David wasn't just talking about the sandwich, that David was seeing something in him that went deeper than one small act of kindness. "I have to get to work," Marcus said. "Go," David said. "And Marcus, thank you, really. You have no idea what this means." Marcus left for work with a strange feeling in his chest. It was warm and uncomfortable at the same time, like he'd done something important without understanding why. Work that day was busy. It was Friday, which meant people were shopping for the weekend. Marcus moved through the store like he always did, stocking shelves, helping customers, operating the register. But his mind kept drifting back to David. to the way the man had looked at him, to the words, "You have no idea what this means." At one point, a woman came in with 3 kids. They were clearly struggling. The kids were asking for things, cereal, candy, soda, and the mother kept saying no. She was buying the cheapest things she could find: rice, beans, store-brand bread. Marcus recognized the look on her face. It was the same look his mother had sometimes, the look of someone doing the math in their head and coming up short. Marcus helped her find the cheapest milk. He told her about a sale on eggs that was coming up tomorrow. He didn't do anything special, just small things, small kindnesses. But the woman looked at him like he'd done something significant. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for being helpful." After she left, Marcus realized something. David had said, "You have no idea what this means." But maybe David was right. Maybe Marcus didn't understand how much small acts of kindness meant to people. Maybe in a world where everyone was struggling, just being seen and helped made all the difference. At 9 p.m., when Marcus clocked out, he walked past the doorway again. David was still there. He was asleep, the empty plastic wrap from the sandwich beside him. Marcus made a decision. Tomorrow, he'd bring another sandwich. Saturday morning, Marcus made 2 sandwiches again. This time, he added an apple. His mother asked him why he was making so much food. "Just hungry," he lied. His mother smiled. "Good, you're growing. You need to eat more." Marcus felt guilty for lying, but he also knew that if he told his mother the truth, she'd worry. She'd feel bad that he was giving away food when they didn't have enough. So he kept it to himself. After school, there was no school on Saturday. Marcus had forgotten. He worked at the grocery store on Saturday. He worked a lot on Saturday. The store was busier on weekends, and Mr. Chen needed more help. But first, Marcus went to see David. David was awake this time. He was sitting in the same spot, and he looked like he hadn't moved since the night before. When he saw Marcus, his face changed. It was like someone had turned on a light inside him. "You came back?" David said. It wasn't a question. It was more like he was confirming something to himself. "I brought you breakfast," Marcus said, handing over the sandwich and the apple. David took them, and this time, he didn't hesitate. He unwrapped the sandwich immediately and ate it like he was starving. When he finished, he ate the apple too, core and all. "You're too good for this world," David said. And there was something in his voice that made Marcus uncomfortable. It was like David was saying something deeper than the words themselves. "I'm just helping," Marcus said. "Exactly," David said. "You're just helping. No expectations, no wanting something in return. Do you know how rare that is?" Marcus didn't answer. He didn't know how to answer. "I've lived a long time," David continued. "I've seen a lot of people. Most of them want something. They help you so that you'll owe them. They're kind so that you'll be kind back. But you," David shook his head, "you're different." "I should get to work," Marcus said. He was uncomfortable with the intensity of David's attention. It felt like too much, like David was putting something on him that he wasn't sure he could carry. "Of course," David said. "Go. But Marcus, come back tomorrow, will you?" Marcus hesitated. Then he nodded. "I will," he said. Sunday morning, Marcus made 3 sandwiches. 1 for him, 2 for David. His mother noticed. "You're eating a lot," she said. But she was smiling. She was happy that he was eating. She didn't ask questions. When Marcus got to the doorway, David was waiting. Not sleeping. Waiting. Like he'd been expecting Marcus. I wasn't sure you'd come back, David said. I said I would, Marcus replied. They sat together for a few minutes. David ate the sandwiches slowly this time, savoring them. They didn't talk much, just sat in the quiet of the Sunday morning. Around them, the city was waking up. People were walking past, going about their lives. Most of them didn't even look at David. Most of them didn't see him at all. But Marcus saw him. Can I ask you something? David said. Sure, Marcus said. Why are you doing this? Really? Don't lie to me. Marcus thought about it. He thought about the homeless man in the doorway. He thought about the woman with 3 kids in the grocery store. He thought about his mother working night shifts. He thought about all the invisible people in the world. Because I know what it feels like, Marcus said finally. To be invisible, to need help. My mom works so hard and we still barely have enough. My sister needs things I can't give her. And I see people every day who are struggling. And I thought if I could help even a little bit, maybe it would matter. David was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. It matters, he said. It matters more than you know. This pattern continued for a week. Every day, Marcus would make sandwiches. Every day, he would visit David before work or after work. They didn't talk much. They just sat together. David would eat. Marcus would listen to the city around them. Then, one day, everything changed. It was a Friday afternoon. Marcus was on his way to work, and he was running late. He'd had to stay after school to talk to a teacher about a math assignment. He was hurrying, thinking about whether Mr. Chen would be upset with him. He was so focused on hurrying that he almost didn't notice the man struggling with grocery bags on the corner of 5th and Main. The man was well dressed. He wore an expensive coat and nice shoes. But he was clearly overwhelmed. He had at least 8 heavy bags, and they were slipping from his hands. He was muttering to himself, and he looked like he was about to drop everything. Marcus stopped. Do you need help? He asked. The man looked at him with surprise, like he couldn't believe someone had noticed him, like he couldn't believe someone had stopped. The man started. Yes, actually. I'm parked just a few blocks away, but I can't. These bags keep slipping. I can help, Marcus said. He took 4 of the bags from the man. They were heavy. Groceries, fresh vegetables, expensive cheese, wine. The kind of groceries that suggested this man had a very different life than Marcus did. Thank you, the man said, and he sounded genuinely grateful. Thank you so much. I don't know what I would have done. They walked together toward the parking garage. The man was quiet at first, but then he started talking. He talked about how overwhelming everything was. He talked about how he'd been running errands all day, and he just couldn't manage anymore. He talked about how he felt like he was drowning in his own life. Marcus listened. He didn't say much. He just listened and helped carry the bags. When they reached the man's car, a sleek black Mercedes, the man pulled out his wallet. He took out a $500 bill and handed it to Marcus. For your help, he said, and for listening. You have no idea what that means. Marcus wanted to refuse. The money felt wrong, like he'd done something to deserve it, when really, he'd just helped someone carry groceries. I can't take that, Marcus said. Please, the man said. I need you to take it. Please. There was something in the man's voice that made Marcus take the money. Something desperate. Something that suggested this wasn't really about the groceries. Thank you, the man said. Really, what's your name? Marcus, he said. The man looked at him for a long moment. "Marcus," he repeated. "You're a good person, Marcus. Don't ever lose that." Then he got in his car and drove away. Marcus stood there on the street, holding a $500 bill, feeling like something significant had just happened. Something he didn't fully understand. He was so confused that he almost forgot about David. But when he got to the doorway after work, David wasn't there. Marcus looked everywhere. He went back to the doorway 3 times that night. He checked the surrounding blocks. He asked other homeless people if they'd seen David. No one had. The next morning, Marcus went back. Still no David. By Sunday, Marcus was starting to worry. What if something had happened to David? What if he was sick? What if he decided to leave? Marcus kept the $500 bill in his pocket. He didn't know why. He just knew he couldn't spend it. Not yet. And he kept making sandwiches, hoping that somehow David would come back. But David didn't come back. What Marcus didn't know was that this stranger had been searching for something his entire life, and he'd just found it. Marcus couldn't stop thinking about David. It had been 2 weeks since the man disappeared, and Marcus found himself constantly wondering where he was. Was he okay? Was he sick? Had he found shelter somewhere else? The $500 bill was still in Marcus's pocket. He carried it everywhere, like it was a clue to something he didn't understand yet. At work, Marcus moved through his shifts mechanically. Stock shelves, help customers, ring up purchases, repeat. But his mind was elsewhere. He kept looking at the doorway where David used to sit, hoping to see the familiar figure with the gray eyes. One evening, about 3 weeks after David disappeared, a woman came into the grocery store. She was dressed expensively, designer clothes, expensive jewelry, the kind of woman who clearly had money. She was looking for something specific, and she seemed frustrated that she couldn't find it. Marcus approached her. "Can I help you find something?" The woman looked at him, and something flickered across her face. Recognition? No, that didn't make sense. She didn't know him. "I'm looking for organic free-range eggs," she said. "The good kind, not the ones that taste like cardboard." "Aisle 7, Marcus said. "Back left corner. We just got a new shipment this morning." The woman followed his directions, and Marcus went back to stocking shelves. But a few minutes later, the woman appeared again. She was holding a carton of eggs, but she wasn't looking at them. She was looking at Marcus. "What's your name?" she asked. "Marcus," he said. The woman's eyes widened slightly. She looked at him more carefully, like she was seeing him for the first time. "How old are you?" 14, Marcus said. He was starting to feel uncomfortable. There was something intense about the way she was looking at him. "Do you go to Lincoln High School?" she asked. "Yes," Marcus said. "How did you—" "I need to talk to you," the woman said. "Not here. Can you take a break?" Marcus looked around. Mr. Chen was in his office. There was only one other cashier working, and it was slow. "I guess I could take 10 minutes. The woman led him to the break room. She sat down and gestured for Marcus to sit across from her. Up close, Marcus could see that she was probably in her 50s. She had kind eyes, but they looked tired, like she hadn't slept well in a long time. "My name is Eleanor," the woman said. "Eleanor Hartwell." The name meant nothing to Marcus. "I'm going to tell you something," Eleanor continued, "and I need you to listen carefully and not interrupt me until I'm finished. Can you do that?" Marcus nodded, though he had no idea what was coming. "About 3 weeks ago," Eleanor said, "a man came to my house. His name was David Chen. He was homeless. He was sick. He was barely able to stand. But he came to my house because he wanted to tell me about you. Marcus's heart stopped. David? He said. You know David. Where is he? Is he okay? Let me finish, Eleanor said gently. Please. Marcus closed his mouth. David came to me because he was dying, Eleanor said. The words hung in the air between them. He had cancer, stage 4. He'd been living on the streets for 5 years, and he knew he didn't have much time left. He came to me because I'm his daughter. Marcus felt the world tilt slightly. He didn't understand what was happening. I hadn't seen my father in 15 years, Eleanor continued. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. We had a terrible fight. He wanted to help me with something, and I was too proud to accept it. I told him he was a failure. I told him I didn't want anything to do with him. And then he left, and I never saw him again. Eleanor paused. She pulled out a tissue and wiped her eyes. 15 years, she repeated. 15 years of not speaking to my father. And then he showed up at my door, sick and dying. And the first thing he did was tell me about you. About me? Marcus said. But why? He barely knew me. He knew you better than you think, Eleanor said. He told me everything. He told me about how you brought him sandwiches, how you sat with him, how you didn't ask for anything in return. He said you were the only person who treated him like he mattered in 5 years. He said you reminded him of who he used to be, before everything fell apart. Marcus felt tears starting to form in his eyes, but he didn't understand why. He was in my house for 3 weeks, Eleanor said. He was in a lot of pain, but he spent most of that time telling me stories about his life, about his mistakes, about the things he regretted. And he kept talking about you. He said you were proof that there was still goodness in the world, that even though his life had fallen apart, at least he'd gotten to meet you before the end. Eleanor reached across the table and took Marcus's hand. My father died last Tuesday, she said quietly. He died in my house, in a comfortable bed, with his daughter holding his hand. And the last thing he said to me was your name. He said, "Tell Marcus thank you. Tell him he saved my life." Marcus couldn't breathe. The break room felt too small. The fluorescent lights were too bright. Everything was too much. He left something for you, Eleanor said. She pulled out an envelope from her purse. It was sealed, and Marcus's name was written on it in shaky handwriting. He wrote this the day before he died. He wanted me to find you and give it to you. Marcus took the envelope with numb fingers. It felt impossibly heavy. I didn't know how to find you, Eleanor continued, but I remembered you worked at a grocery store. I went to 3 different stores before I found this one. I've been coming here for a week, hoping you'd be working. Marcus opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a letter and a photograph. The photograph showed a younger man, maybe 30 years old, standing with a woman and a small child. The man was smiling. He looked happy. He looked alive. Marcus recognized the man's eyes. They were David's eyes. He unfolded the letter and began to read. Dear Marcus, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. I'm sorry I had to leave without saying goodbye. I didn't have the strength to tell you what was coming. I want you to know that the time I spent with you changed my life. I know that sounds dramatic. I know I was only in your life for a short time. But in those few weeks, you showed me something I thought I'd lost forever. You showed me that I still mattered. That even though I'd failed at everything else, I could still be helped by someone who asked for nothing in return. You see, Marcus, I spent 15 years on the streets because I was ashamed. I was ashamed of my failures. I was ashamed of what I'd become. And shame has a way of making you invisible. It makes you believe that you don't deserve kindness, that you don't deserve to be seen. But you saw me. You brought me food. You sat with me. You treated me like I was a human being. And in doing that, you gave me back something I thought was lost forever. You gave me back my dignity. I went to see my daughter because of you. I told her about you, and somehow, talking about your kindness made it easier for me to ask for her forgiveness. We had 15 years of hurt between us, but because of you, we got to heal it before the end. I don't have much to leave you, but I want you to have my watch. It's not worth much money, but it's the last thing I have from before everything fell apart. I want you to have it so that you remember this. Kindness matters. It changes lives. It changes the world. The $500 you gave back, yes, I know you didn't spend it. I want you to use that to help someone else. Use it to do what you do best. Use it to see people who are invisible. Thank you, Marcus. Thank you for saving my life. David Chen. Marcus couldn't read anymore. The words were blurring through his tears. He was crying in the break room of Save Mart, in front of a woman he'd never met. And he couldn't stop. Eleanor reached across the table and pulled him into a hug. She was crying too. He loved you, she whispered. He really did. In such a short time, he loved you like a grandson. When Marcus finally pulled away, Eleanor opened another envelope. Inside was a beautiful silver watch. It was old, but it was clearly well made. On the back was engraved, "To David with love, Eleanor, 1985. That was from me, Eleanor said. From before we stopped speaking. He kept it all those years. He kept it with him on the streets. Marcus held the watch carefully. It was warm from Eleanor's hand. It felt like holding something sacred. I want to tell you something, Eleanor said. I want to tell you who my father really was. Before he became homeless. Before shame took over his life. Eleanor told him the story. David had been a set designer for films. He was talented and respected. He'd won awards. He had a family, a wife, a daughter, a good life. But then he made a mistake. A terrible mistake. He took money from a production company to pay for his daughter's college tuition. He was going to pay it back, but before he could, he was caught. He went to prison for 2 years. When he got out, his wife had left him. His daughter didn't want to see him. He couldn't find work because of his record. He ended up on the streets. He was a good man, Eleanor said. He made one terrible mistake, and it cost him everything. But in the end, he got to see that his life still had value. He got to know you, and he got to reconcile with me. He got to die knowing that he mattered. After Eleanor left, Marcus sat in the break room for a long time. He was supposed to go back to work, but he couldn't move. He was holding his father's watch. No, David's watch. And he was trying to process everything. David was dead. David, who had shown up in his life like an angel, was gone. But he'd left something behind. He'd left a mark. He'd left Eleanor, who was now looking for ways to honor her father's memory. He'd left Marcus with a watch and a $500 bill and a mission. Mr. Chen came into the break room. Marcus, you need to get back to work. I know, Marcus said. I'm sorry, I got some bad news. Mr. Chen looked at him carefully. Then he nodded. Take the rest of the night off. Go home. Be with your family. Marcus wanted to argue, but he was too tired. He clocked out and walked home in the darkness. When he got there, His mother was getting ready for her night shift. She took one look at him and knew something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked. Marcus told her everything. He told her about David. He told her about Eleanor. He told her about the watch and the letter. He told her about a man who'd been invisible for 15 years until someone saw him. His mother held him while he cried. She didn't say anything. She just held him. "You did a good thing," she said finally. "You helped someone when they needed it most. That matters, Marcus. That really matters." After his mother left for work, Marcus sat alone in the quiet house. He looked at the watch. It was 11:47 p.m. He wound it up and listened to it tick. Each second was a heartbeat. Each heartbeat was a moment of life. David had spent 15 years invisible, but in the last few weeks of his life, he'd been seen. He'd been loved. He'd been forgiven. And it was all because Marcus had brought him a sandwich. Marcus pulled out the $500 bill. He thought about what David had written. Use it to see people who are invisible. He knew exactly what he was going to do. But Marcus had no idea that his next decision would attract the attention of someone who could change everything. Marcus spent the entire weekend thinking about what to do with the $500. David's words echoed in his mind. Use it to see people who are invisible. He could give it to his mother. God knew they needed it. But something told him that wasn't what David meant. David had given Eleanor money to help him, and that had led to reconciliation. David wanted Marcus to use the money to help others the way Marcus had helped him. By Sunday evening, Marcus had a plan. He started small. On Monday, he went to the grocery store before school and bought supplies. Bread, peanut butter, jelly, cheese, apples, granola bars, water bottles. Things that were filling and portable. Things that homeless people could eat without needing to cook. During his lunch period, instead of eating in the cafeteria, Marcus made sandwiches in the school kitchen. The teacher who supervised lunch was sympathetic to his cause, and he distributed them to homeless people around the neighborhood. He gave them out with a smile and a kind word. He didn't ask questions. He didn't judge. He just saw them. By the end of the week, he'd spent $200. The second week, he did the same thing. By the end of that week, he'd spent $400. He had $100 left. On Friday of the second week, something unexpected happened. Marcus was distributing sandwiches near the train station when a man approached him. He was well-dressed, probably in his 60s, with kind eyes and gray hair. "Excuse me," the man said. "Are you the young man who's been giving out sandwiches?" Marcus was immediately suspicious. "Yes," he said cautiously. "Why?" "My name is Robert Walsh," the man said. "I'm a social worker. I work with homeless populations in this city. Several of my clients have mentioned a kind young man who's been helping them. They said you don't ask for anything in return. You just help." Marcus relaxed slightly. "I'm just trying to help." "I know," Robert said, "and it's beautiful work. But I want to talk to you about something. Can you meet with me sometime? Not now, but soon?" Marcus agreed, though he wasn't sure why. There was something trustworthy about Robert, something genuine. They met the following Tuesday at a coffee shop near the school. Robert ordered them both hot chocolate and sat down across from Marcus. "I've been doing this work for 30 years, Robert said, "and I've learned something important. Individual acts of kindness are beautiful, but they're not enough. A sandwich helps someone for one meal, but what they really need is a system. They need housing. They need mental health services. They need job training. They need a path out of homelessness." Marcus listened. "What you're doing is important," Robert continued. "But I want to ask you something. What if you could do more? What if you could help create a system that actually changes lives? How? Marcus asked. I'm starting a non-profit organization, Robert said. It's called The Visible Project. The goal is to create a comprehensive support system for homeless youth in this city. Housing, education, job training, mental health services. Everything they need to get back on their feet. Robert pulled out a folder and showed Marcus the plans. It was detailed and thoughtful. It was exactly what Marcus had been thinking about, how to help people not just for one meal, but for their entire lives. I'm looking for young people to be part of this, Robert said. People who understand what it's like to struggle. People who have compassion. People like you. I want you to be on the advisory board. I want your voice to help shape this organization. Marcus was stunned. I'm 14. I'm still in school. I know, Robert said. But you understand something that a lot of adults don't. You understand what it means to be invisible. You understand what it means to be helped when you need it most. That's valuable. That's more valuable than a degree. Over the next month, Marcus became involved with the Visible Project. He attended meetings. He helped develop programs. He shared his perspective on what homeless youth actually needed. He brought his lived experience to the table. Eleanor, David's daughter, also became involved. When Marcus told her about the Visible Project, she decided to donate money to help get it started. She donated $50,000. It was enough to secure a building and hire staff. The first shelter opened 3 months later. It was a converted warehouse in a neighborhood that had been forgotten by the city. It had beds. It had showers. It had a kitchen. It had classrooms where young people could earn their GED. It had a job training center where people could learn skills and find employment. Marcus was there on opening day. He helped set up beds. He helped organize supplies. He helped welcome the first residents. The first person to walk through the door was a girl named Jasmine. She was 16 years old. She'd been homeless for 2 years. She'd been living in shelters and on the streets. She looked terrified and hopeful at the same time. Marcus remembered that feeling. He remembered what it felt like to be struggling and invisible. "Welcome," he said to Jasmine. "You're safe here. We're going to help you." Jasmine started to cry. She cried like she hadn't cried in a long time. She cried like she'd been holding it in, waiting for someone to tell her it was okay to feel. By the time Marcus was 16, the Visible Project had expanded to 3 shelters. They were serving over 200 homeless youth. They'd helped 40 young people get jobs. They'd helped 30 young people go back to school. They'd helped over 100 young people get stable housing. And it all started with a sandwich. Marcus was working at the grocery store less now. He was spending more time at the Visible Project. Mr. Chen had been understanding about it. He'd even donated groceries to the shelter. One day, about a year after the Visible Project opened, Marcus received a letter. It was from a university. He'd applied to several universities, even though his grades weren't perfect and his family didn't have money. He'd applied because Robert had encouraged him to. He'd applied because he wanted to study social work. He wanted to make a career out of helping people. The letter was an acceptance. It came with a full scholarship. 4 years of tuition, room, and board, all covered. Marcus read the letter 3 times to make sure it was real. His mother cried when he told her. His sister hugged him. Eleanor sent him flowers. But the person Marcus wanted to tell was David. He wanted to tell David that his kindness had set off a chain reaction. That one act of compassion had led to another, and another, and another. until it had created something real, something that was helping people. Marcus went to the cemetery where David was buried. He brought flowers. He sat by the grave for a long time. "I got accepted to university," he said quietly. "I'm going to study social work. I'm going to help people. And it's all because of you. Because you taught me that kindness matters. Because you showed me that even when everything falls apart, there's still value in being seen." Marcus placed the flowers on the grave. He touched the headstone. It was cold and smooth. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you for everything." The summer before Marcus went to university, the Visible Project hosted an event. It was a celebration of the young people who had graduated from their programs. 40 young people stood on a stage and told their stories. They talked about how they'd been homeless. They talked about how the Visible Project had helped them. They talked about their plans for the future. Jasmine, the first girl to walk through the door, was one of them. She'd gotten her GED. She'd gotten a job at a local tech company. She was saving money to move into her own apartment. "I want to thank Marcus," Jasmine said during her speech. "Marcus was one of the first people to welcome me. He treated me like I mattered, and that made all the difference." The crowd applauded. Marcus felt his face turn red. After the event, reporters wanted to interview Marcus. They wanted to know his story. They wanted to know how a 14-year-old boy had started an organization that was helping hundreds of people. Marcus told them about David. He told them about the sandwich. He told them about how one act of kindness had changed everything. The story went viral. Local news picked it up, then national news, then international news. Suddenly, Marcus's story was everywhere. He became known as the Sandwich Boy. People started calling him a hero. They started asking him to speak at schools and universities. They started donating money to the Visible Project. But Marcus didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a kid who'd done something simple and been lucky enough to see it grow into something bigger. One day, about 6 months after the news story broke, Marcus received an email. It was from a film producer. The producer had heard Marcus's story and wanted to make a documentary about it. They wanted to follow Marcus through his first year of university. They wanted to tell the story of how kindness changes the world. Marcus was hesitant. He didn't want to be famous. He didn't want to be a symbol. He just wanted to help people. But Robert convinced him. "Your story will inspire people," Robert said. "People will see what you did and they'll want to do the same thing. They'll want to help. They'll want to see the invisible people in their own communities." So Marcus agreed. The documentary was released a year later. It was called Visible, The Marcus Chen Story. It premiered at a film festival and won several awards. It was picked up by a major streaming service and watched by millions of people. After the documentary came out, the Visible Project received donations from all over the world. They were able to expand to 10 cities. They were able to help thousands of young people. And it all started with a sandwich. Marcus was 19 years old when he graduated from university with a degree in social work. He was offered jobs at prestigious organizations. He was offered book deals. He was offered speaking engagements all over the world. But he turned most of it down. Instead, he became the executive director of the Visible Project. He worked 60-hour weeks. He slept in the shelters sometimes just to understand what his clients were experiencing. He interviewed every young person who came through the doors. He listened to their stories. He helped them see that they mattered. Eleanor retired from her business and became the director of development for the Visible Project. She spent her days raising money and telling donors about the organization's mission. She spent her nights thinking about her father and how his suffering had led to something beautiful. One day, 10 years after Marcus first brought David a sandwich, Eleanor and Marcus were sitting in the main office of the Visible Project. They were looking at the numbers. Over 10,000 young people had gone through their programs. Over 5,000 had found stable housing. Over 3,000 had gotten jobs. Over 2,000 had gone back to school. "Your father would be so proud," Marcus said to Eleanor. Eleanor smiled. She pulled out a photograph. It was the same photograph that had been in David's letter. David, young and happy, standing with his wife and daughter. "He is proud," Eleanor said. "Somewhere he's proud." But Marcus's story wasn't over. In fact, the most important part was just beginning. One day, a letter arrived at the Visible Project. It was from a major foundation. The foundation had been following Marcus's work for years. They wanted to fund a nationwide expansion of the Visible Project. They wanted to help Marcus create a model that could be replicated in every city in the country. The letter included a check for $10 million. Marcus read the letter several times. He looked at the check. $10 million. It was more money than he could have imagined. He called a meeting with the entire staff of the Visible Project. He told them about the foundation's offer. He told them about the expansion plans. "We can do this," Marcus said. "We can create a system that helps homeless youth all over the country. We can make sure that no young person has to feel invisible. We can make sure that everyone has access to the help they need." The room erupted in applause. That night, Marcus went to the cemetery again. He brought flowers. He sat by David's grave. "We did it," Marcus said. "We actually did it. We're going to help people all over the country, all because you brought me a sandwich and treated me like I mattered." Marcus placed his hand on the headstone. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you for being the person who showed me what kindness really means." But Marcus had no idea that his work was about to attract the attention of someone who would challenge everything he believed about kindness and change. Marcus was 25 years old when he first met Dr. James Morrison. Dr. Morrison was a sociologist and policy expert who had spent 30 years studying poverty and homelessness. He'd written several books. He'd testified before Congress. He was respected in academic circles. But he was also known for being brutally honest about what worked and what didn't in social services. He arrived at the Visible Project's main office on a Tuesday morning in October. He was tall, with sharp eyes and graying hair. He carried himself with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what he thought and wasn't afraid to say it. Robert had invited him to visit. Robert wanted Marcus to get feedback on the Visible Project's expansion plans. Robert thought Dr. Morrison's perspective would be valuable. Marcus wished Robert had warned him about Dr. Morrison's personality. "This is impressive," Dr. Morrison said, walking through the shelter. He observed the residents. He looked at the classrooms. He examined the job training center. But it's also incomplete. "What do you mean?" Marcus asked. "Come to my hotel tomorrow," Dr. Morrison said. "I want to talk to you about some things, serious things." The next day, Marcus met Dr. Morrison at a coffee shop near the hotel. Dr. Morrison had a folder full of papers. He spread them out on the table. "I've been studying your organization," Dr. Morrison said. "I've read all the reports. I've looked at the numbers. And I want to be direct with you. You're solving the symptom, not the disease." Marcus felt defensive. "We're helping people. We're giving them housing and jobs and education." "I know," Dr. Morrison said. "And that's admirable. But let me ask you a question. Why are there homeless youth in the first place?" Because they don't have families. Because they've experienced trauma. Because the system has failed them, Marcus said. Exactly, Dr. Morrison said. The system has failed them. And your organization is trying to patch the holes in the system instead of fixing the system itself. Dr. Morrison pulled out a graph. It showed the number of homeless youth in the city over the past 10 years. The number had gone up, not down. You've helped 10,000 young people, Dr. Morrison said. That's wonderful. But in the same time period, 20,000 new young people have become homeless. You're helping people faster than they're becoming homeless, but you're not preventing new people from becoming homeless in the first place. Marcus stared at the graph. He'd never thought about it that way. What are you suggesting? Marcus asked. I'm suggesting that you need to think bigger, Dr. Morrison said. You need to think about policy. You need to think about prevention. You need to think about why families are falling apart in the first place. You need to think about why there aren't enough affordable housing options. You need to think about why the education system is failing so many kids. Those are massive systemic problems, Marcus said. How am I supposed to fix those? You're not supposed to fix them alone, Dr. Morrison said. But you have a platform now. You have credibility. You have resources. You could be advocating for policy changes. You could be working with legislators. You could be creating systemic change instead of just treating the symptoms. Dr. Morrison's words haunted Marcus for weeks. He couldn't stop thinking about the graph. He couldn't stop thinking about the fact that while he was helping people, more people were becoming homeless. He started researching policy. He started reading about housing policy, education policy, welfare policy. He started understanding the systemic issues that led to homelessness. And the more he learned, the more he realized that Dr. Morrison was right. The Visible Project was doing important work, but it wasn't addressing the root causes of homelessness. Marcus called a meeting with Eleanor and Robert. I think we need to change our approach, Marcus said. He told them about his conversation with Dr. Morrison. He told them about the graph. He told them about his realization that they were treating symptoms instead of causes. But we can't stop helping people, Eleanor said. We can't abandon the shelters. I'm not suggesting we do, Marcus said. I'm suggesting we do both. We keep helping people, but we also start advocating for systemic change. Robert nodded slowly. Dr. Morrison has a point. We've been so focused on direct service that we haven't thought much about policy advocacy. So what do we do? Eleanor asked. We create a policy division, Marcus said. We hire people who understand policy. We start researching systemic solutions. We start advocating for change at the legislative level. Over the next year, the Visible Project underwent a transformation. They kept all their shelters and services, but they also created a policy division. They hired researchers and policy experts. They started conducting studies on homelessness. They started publishing white papers. They started meeting with legislators. Marcus became a policy advocate. He testified before city council. He testified before the state legislature. He met with governors and senators. He talked about the systemic issues that led to homelessness. He talked about affordable housing. He talked about mental health services. He talked about education reform. It was exhausting and frustrating work. Progress was slow. Legislation was complicated. Politicians had competing interests and limited budgets. But slowly, things started to change. The city passed a new affordable housing ordinance. The state increased funding for mental health services. A new education bill was passed that provided more resources to struggling schools. And each time a policy changed, Fewer young people became homeless. The graph started to flatten. The number of new homeless youth started to decrease. 2 years after meeting Dr. Morrison, Marcus invited him to speak at the Visible Project's annual conference. The conference was attended by social workers, policy experts, legislators, and activists from all over the country. Dr. Morrison gave a presentation about the systemic causes of homelessness. He talked about the research that the Visible Project had conducted. He talked about the policy changes that had been implemented. He talked about the results. When I first visited the Visible Project, Dr. Morrison said, I was critical. I thought they were treating symptoms instead of causes. But I was wrong. They listened to the criticism. They adapted. They evolved. And now they're doing something remarkable. They're not just helping individuals, they're creating systemic change. After the presentation, Dr. Morrison and Marcus sat together. I owe you an apology, Marcus said. For what? Dr. Morrison asked. For being defensive when you criticized us, Marcus said. You were right. We were treating symptoms, and I'm grateful you pushed us to think bigger. Dr. Morrison smiled. That's the thing about criticism, he said. It's only valuable if you're willing to listen and adapt. You listened, you adapted, and look what happened. But as the Visible Project's work expanded into policy advocacy, Marcus started to face new criticism. Some people said he was abandoning direct service. Some people said he was becoming too political. Some people said he was losing sight of the original mission. One day, Marcus received an email from a woman named Sarah. Sarah had been a resident at one of the Visible Project's shelters 5 years ago. She'd gotten her GED. She'd gotten a job. She'd moved into her own apartment. She'd built a life. But the email wasn't congratulatory. It was critical. I heard you're spending more time on policy work than on direct service, Sarah wrote. I want to remind you that policy doesn't help people like me. Direct service helped me. A person who cared about me helped me. You need to remember that. Marcus read the email several times. He felt confused. He thought the policy work was important. He thought it would prevent other young people from becoming homeless. But Sarah's words reminded him of something important. Policy was abstract. People were real. He called Sarah and asked if they could meet. They met at a coffee shop. Sarah was doing well. She had a good job. She was living independently. She was happy. But she was also concerned about the Visible Project's direction. I'm not saying policy work isn't important, Sarah said. I'm saying don't forget about the people. Don't forget that behind every statistic is a human being. Behind every policy is a person whose life will be affected. I haven't forgotten, Marcus said, but I want to prevent other young people from becoming homeless in the first place. I know, Sarah said, and that's noble. But in the meantime, there are young people who are homeless right now. They need help right now. They need to know that someone sees them and cares about them. Policy change takes years. People need help today. Marcus realized that Sarah was right. He'd been so focused on systemic change that he'd lost sight of the immediate human need. That night, Marcus made a decision. He was going to step back from his role as executive director of the Visible Project. He was going to return to direct service. He was going to work in the shelters again. He was going to remember why he'd started this work in the first place. He told Robert and Eleanor about his decision. Are you sure? Robert asked. You've done so much good work on the policy side. I'm sure, Marcus said. The policy work is important. But I need to remember why I started this. I started because I wanted to help people, not abstractions, not statistics. People. Eleanor understood immediately. She'd felt the same pull back to direct service. She'd been spending so much time raising money and managing the organization that she'd forgotten what it felt like to actually help someone. "I'll come back with you," Eleanor said. "I'll take a step back from fundraising and work in the shelters again." Marcus returned to direct service. He worked in the shelters. He helped young people. He listened to their stories. He helped them see that they mattered. And something shifted inside him. The policy work was still important. But the direct service was where his heart was. The policy work was about preventing homelessness. The direct service was about honoring the humanity of people who were homeless right now. He realized that the answer wasn't either or. It was both and. The Visible Project needed to do both. They needed to help individuals, and they needed to advocate for systemic change. One day, about 6 months after returning to direct service, Marcus was working in the shelter when a young man came in. He was 16 years old. His name was Marcus. Marcus, the young one, had been living on the streets for 6 months. He'd run away from home because his parents were abusive. He was scared and hungry, and he didn't know what to do. Marcus, the older one, took him under his wing. He showed him to a bed. He got him food. He listened to his story. "Why are you helping me?" young Marcus asked. "You don't know me." "Because you matter," Marcus said. "Because I see you, and I want you to know that your life has value." Young Marcus started to cry. He cried like he'd been holding it in for a long time. That night, Marcus went home and thought about David. He thought about how David had shown him that being seen mattered. He thought about how that single act of kindness had set off a chain reaction that had changed thousands of lives. He realized that the work would never be finished. There would always be young people who needed help. There would always be systemic problems that needed to be fixed. But that didn't mean the work wasn't worth doing. It just meant the work was bigger than any one person or any one organization. It meant that everyone had a role to play. Some people worked in direct service. Some people worked on policy. Some people donated money. Some people volunteered. Some people just saw people who were invisible and treated them with kindness. And all of it mattered. All of it was part of the larger movement toward a world where no one had to be invisible. Marcus was 28 years old when he received a call from the governor's office. The governor wanted to meet with him. The governor wanted to talk about creating a statewide initiative to address homelessness. Marcus went to the governor's office. They talked for 3 hours. The governor had read Marcus's research. The governor had watched the documentary about Marcus's life. The governor was inspired by what Marcus had done. "I want to create a program," the governor said. "A statewide program based on the Visible Project's model. I want to help homeless youth all over the state. I want your help to design it." Marcus was stunned. This was the kind of systemic change that Dr. Morrison had talked about. This was the kind of policy work that could prevent homelessness on a large scale. "I'll help," Marcus said, "but I have one condition." "What's that?" the governor asked. "I want to make sure that the program includes direct service," Marcus said. "I want to make sure that young people aren't just statistics in a program. I want to make sure that they're seen and valued as human beings." The governor nodded. "I understand. We'll make sure the program includes both policy and direct service." Over the next 2 years, the statewide program was developed and implemented. It was called the Visible Initiative. It included shelters, job training, education programs, and mental health services. It also included policy work aimed at preventing homelessness in the first place. The program was successful. Within 3 years, homelessness among youth in the state had decreased by 40%. And it all started with a sandwich. Marcus often thought about that moment. He thought about David sitting in a doorway. He thought about bringing him a sandwich. He thought about how that single act of kindness had rippled outward in ways he could never have predicted. He realized that kindness was powerful, but kindness combined with systemic change was even more powerful. Kindness opened people's hearts. Systemic change opened doors. Both were necessary. Both were important. But Marcus had no idea that his success was about to be tested in ways he'd never imagined.